Hare Krishna. Can you hear my voice? Am I audible?
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhu. Yes, you are very much audible.
Sorry, Prabhu. I'm really sorry.
No. You are right. Right on time. You joined on time. It's because of these technical things. I think something went wrong.
Yeah, I had some problem with my earphone, so I changed it to my headset.
Thank you, Prabhu. So should we start? I think most of the devotees have probably joined. Normally they join by like 7:05. So Hare Krishna once again. Dandavat, all goes to Srila Prabhupada. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavena namo namaha. So on behalf of the ISKCON of Seattle, I feel privileged to welcome His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu to address our Seattle devotees. I'm immensely grateful to Prabhuji for accepting my invitation to conduct this session. We had some discussion regarding, what should be the subject matter. So I suggested something, and then Prabhuji very aptly said that, we are going to start chapter number 4. So hence this topic was chosen by Prabhuji. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation. So when Madhachandra Prabhu, he came last time to Seattle, so he introduced me to Prabhuji's series of lecture on Nectar of Devotion, which were conducted at GAB. And I gradually started listening to them, and it's like a ocean of this is so deep. Prabhu is going explaining this the Nectar of Devotion in so much details. I learned so many things, so many concepts during these sessions. So I felt it would be very helpful for our congregation to have some association and learn from Prabhuji. So I'm very grateful to Madhachandra Prabhu for kindly doing so. Also, Madhachandra Prabhu knows Prabhuji very well. So I thought it's best that Prabhuji introduces Balaram Shakti Prabhu to us. So I would give it to Madhachandra Prabhu. But before giving it to Madhachandra Prabhu, I would like to express my gratitude to Vrajaraman Prabhu for making all these things happen, like the Zoom session and all the technical things. And of course, during the class sessions also, he will be taking care of those technical needs. And last but not least, all the devotees who have joined online, thank you so much. So let's hear from Madhachandra Prabhu more about Balaram Shakti Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat through always Prabhupada. Yeah, thank you so much for giving this opportunity to connect with all of you. So to give a little background about Balaram Shakti Prabhu, so I have been knowing him for 15 years now. Is it volume okay?
Volume is fine, Prabhu. Yeah.
Okay. So I know Balaram Shakti Prabhu for past 15 years. And Prabhuji is coming from South Indian background. He's born and brought up in Sri Vaishnava tradition. And then he came to America and he did his PhD from Penn State. He's, academically very highly qualified. But after finishing his PhD, he came to India and then he joined full-time in Chaupati Ashram. And he studied systematically, got brahmachari training, and he studied systematically the scriptures. And then he has, a very deep understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam and all Prabhupada's books, and then the Acharya's work as well. So he had been teaching systematically for brahmacharis in Govardhan Eco Village and Chaupati, Pune, all over India in different places, Srimad Bhagavatam and other Harinam Chintamani, Nectar of Devotion, and many books, Manashiksha, and many books, Saishanya Shikta, Shikshamrita. So he almost has every day very tight schedule. Every day he conducts like at least 2 to 3 sessions. So he's committed himself to systematically teach our scriptures from our tradition, understanding, our acharyas work through the vision of Prabhupada. And I'm very fortunate to be connected with him. And Prabhuji's understanding of subtlety of devotional service is very deep. So it always inspires me to hear from him, to continue the path of devotional service, to understand how, systematic and scientific our tradition is, and then how this can be understood in a way that it elevates our consciousness. So again, I'm very grateful that Prabhu can come here. So I don't want to take too much of time. Then today is a very apt topic, the mood to understand the technical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we all know, Bhagavatam has many technical sections, and how to understand this, because Bhagavatam, generally people think that it is a devotional literature. Yes, it is devotional literature, but it includes knowledge. It is all encompassing, So how to understand, as a practicing devotee, how to understand those technical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam will be very good if we can hear from His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Handing over to you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, bro. Thank you very much. So am I at least the co-host? I can share, right? Okay. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much, especially His Grace Amritananda Prabhu for inviting me, and also to Madhav Chandra Prabhu for kindly giving that inappropriate, not so appropriate introduction. I don't deserve all that he has spoken, but nevertheless he has always had a very soft corner for me. So thank you very much. So I actually, Prabhuji requested me to speak on the topic of importance of studying Bhagavatam, something like that. Is that what you said, Prabhu? Was it importance of studying Bhagavatam, something like that, or importance of studying Shastras? But when he told me that that they are currently discussing the second canto, so then I thought this would be an appropriate topic because we will be discussing. I'm sure you must have already started discussing about the universal form and all these things. The first chapter onwards, you would have been discussing the universal form, and and so many more times the universal form and other such things will keep on repeating in Srimad Bhagavatam. So how do we understand that? We are going to discuss on that theme. Yes, Prabhu. Amritananda, I saw that you had unmuted yourself.
Yes, Prabhu. So Rajanavan Prabhu gave me the control now. So yeah, so the topic, yes, was going deeper into Srimad Bhagavatam and understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. Importance of the Bhakti scriptures in our life.
Yeah, maybe sometime we could discuss on that also. But today, I think we will just take this theme of how do we approach these technical sections? What should be the right mood to approach the technical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam? So what we can do is, I don't know what is the procedure that you follow, but what I will do is I'll start discussing, and I will keep pausing in between to take some discussion points, questions, and or if something is really pressing and you really want to get it clarified, and so you can always raise your hands. We can have a discussion and then move forward. We are in no rush. I mean, this is a fairly short presentation only. It's not like a very Some of my presentations are quite long. This is a short presentation, so hopefully I should be able to complete. Even otherwise, it's okay. We could always do it some other day. But you can always, I will myself pause after a few slides, after every few slides. But you can also raise your hands in case if something you really want, you really want a clarification before we move ahead. You can always please raise your hands and we can have a discussion. Okay, so with that brief prelude, I'll get going. So the topic is the right mood to approach the technical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, because many times we just tend to skip, at least I used to tend to skip these sections, what is this, so much details, how is it really going to enhance my devotion towards Krishna? That's how I used to think. So, and also devotees may, they may think that why is there so much discussion about the universal form? This, for example, the second canto has just 10 chapters. It's the one of the shortest cantos, and there are 3 descriptions of universal form in the 10 chapters, which runs to almost 5 chapters. In 5 of the 10 chapters, you will have descriptions of universal form, and especially this form, which we know is an imaginary form, right? It's not really a spiritual form. It's an imaginary form, and it is described in 5 out of 10 chapters of second canto, and 2 more descriptions of universal form come in the third canto also. So it almost seems like it's not going to leave you, and it's not such an exciting description also. It's so technical. Why go so technical trying to understand an imaginary form? Just tell that it's an imaginary form and let's move on. We may think like that, right? And there are so many other such topics. Like there is a deep discussion of Vedic cosmology. There are descriptions of liberation. Kapiladev describes Sankhya so deeply. Then there is description of some Karma Yoga, some Jnana Yoga, so many things. We don't mind. But just why in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Because Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand it's Amala Puran. It's a spotless Purana. Right from the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, we always hear that Srimad Bhagavatam kicks out all kinds of false religion, right? We hear that Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Molanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parair Ishvara Sadyo Hridya Varudyate Trakritibir Shushrushibit Tachanat. We hear right from the beginning, Bhagavatam kicks out all kinds of false religion. And what is false religion? Our acharyas say, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. This is false. Why is it false? Because it deludes us from the real aspiration, which should be Krishna Prema. Okay, so it will distract us. So Bhagavatam right from the outset rejects. Really? Then why is there so much description in Uddhava Gita in the 11th canto, in Kapiladev's teachings in the 3rd canto, in the 4th canto, in the teachings of the 4 Kumaras to Prithu Maharaj, in the 5th canto, some sections where Rishabdev is teaching to his own sons, and Rahuguna teaching to, Jadabharat teaching to Rahuguna. There is so much mention about liberation. And you are telling right at the outset, Bhagavatam rejects all these kinds of false things. There is elaborate discussion about liberation by Krishna in the Uddhava Gita. So why in Amala Puran should there be? This is supposed to be a spotless Purana. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended it. If you see all the other sampradayas, Even though all the other sampradayas talk about pure devotional service, but they don't do it in such an exclusive way like the Gaudiya Sampradaya does. Even though all the four Vaishnava Sampradayas are bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas, but the extent to which the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya exclusively emphasizes on pure devotional service, that kind of an exclusive emphasis on pure devotional service is not there in any other Sampradaya. Many other, coming from a Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya myself, for general practice, lot of what is spoken about is actually mixed with lot of karma. Honestly speaking, it's not that pure devotional service is not there and not taught in the Sampradaya, but for common people, most of what is emphasized is lot of karma, right? But our Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, prides itself for actually such an exclusive emphasis on pure devotional service, to the extent that mukti spruha, or desire for mukti, is so much criticized that the other sampradaya devotees get bewildered, because all that they talk about, or most of what they talk about, is actually mukti. So, and that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the acharyas, whom it is described, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunau Sadharma Samstapakau Lokanam Hitakarinau Tribhuvane Manyau Sharanyakaram. It is mentioned about the 6 Goswamis. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunau. They were such experts in understanding and analyzing all the Shastras. But by analyzing all the Shastras, they established Sadharma Samstapakau. Sadharma is pure devotional service. And in such a parampara, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave exclusive emphasis to Srimad Bhagavatam. So, he does not talk about Shastra Adhyayan. He does not talk about just studying scriptures. For him, scriptures means Srimad Bhagavatam. Aradhyo Bhagavan Rajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadu Vargenaya Kalpita Shrimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prema Pumarto Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor Matamidam Tatradarona. It is the exclusive. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he emphasized Bhagavatam. Pramanam Amalam. It's the spotless Purana. Spotless means there is nothing other than pure devotional service. Pure devotional service as the means and Krishna Prema as the end. That is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. But really, this sounds little bit stretched, because there is so much discussion about, now tell me, how is a description of the universal form relevant for my developing attraction towards Krishna, Shyam Sundar, right? And how is a knowledge about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga? Okay, in Bhagavad Gita it is fine, but why in Srimad Bhagavatam? It's supposed to be the Amala Puran, right? So, we will try to understand why in Bhagavatam these topics are there, and how should we approach these topics. Is it appropriate that Srimad Bhagavatam claims itself to be an Amala Puran, but still has these topics? Bhagavatam is called Paramahamsa Samhita, the only Samhita which is exclusively relevant for the Paramahamsas. The Paramahamsas can come and relish. Why in such a Samhita there are so many other such descriptions? The first thing that we should try to understand is, one popular misconception is that because it is mentioned that Bhagavatam is Paramahamsa Samhita, we think that it is meant only for the Paramahamsas. This is the first misconception. Srimad Bhagavatam is not just meant for the Paramahamsas. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam was, while Paramahamsas can relish it, the prime purpose of compiling Srimad Bhagavatam or speaking Srimad Bhagavatam was not for the Paramahamsas. The intended audience was completely different. Now you may say, how do you know? How do you know? So in Srimad Bhagavatam, if you see, Yasudev compiled it, Shukadeva Goswami spoke it, subsequently Suta Goswami spoke it. Before that, Maitreya Rishi spoke Bhagavatam. Narada Muni spoke Bhagavatam to Vyasadev in a condensed way. The Supreme Lord spoke Bhagavatam to Brahmaji. Brahmaji spoke Bhagavatam to Narada Muni. So there are so many speakers of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let us see at least some of these speakers, when they spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, who were the target audience in their mind? Whom did they want to address this book to? Whom did they want to dedicate this book to? Okay. So that would give us some understanding of the intended audience of this book. Okay. First, let's take Vyasadev. What was the purpose of Vyasadev compiling Srimad Bhagavatam? You know, famous verse, first canto, 7th chapter, you know, the 3 verses which describe Vyasadev getting the spurti to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite amale apashyat purusham purnam mayam chatadapashrayam. After being instructed by Narada Muni, Vyasadev was sitting in Badrika Ashram and meditating with a heart filled with devotion, and he got the darshan of Krishna along with Maya Devi. Yaya sammohito jivo atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manute anartam tatkritam chapi padyate. Then he saw how this Maya Devi is affecting the living entities, putting them under bewilderment, making them identify with this body, and with that bodily identification, whatever actions they perform, they are bound by karma, and being bound by karma, they are suffering. What is the solution? Anartho pashamam sakshad bhakti yogam adokshaje lokasya ajanato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. It is mentioned that anartha upashamam, to get out of this anartha, sakshat bhakti yogam adokshaje, is possible only by pure devotional service. But ajanato lokasya, but ignorant people do not know this. Therefore, Vidwan, the all-knowing Vyasadev, now he has become all-knowing. He has always been all-knowing, but now he has been empowered by the instructions of his guru. So, Vidvam Chakre Satvata Samhitam. So he compiled this work, Bhagavatam, for ignorant people. So who is the audience? Intended audience of Yasudev? Ignorant people. Ignorant people of this world who do not know how to escape this cycle of birth and death, who are struggling, being bound by the law of karma, who are identifying with their body, and with that bodily identification performing activities and getting terribly bound. So he had those people in his mind when he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. Ajanato lokasya chakre satvata samhitam. He compiled this Bhagavatam for the purpose of these ignorant people. This is Vyasadev. Vyasadev's own son, Shukadeva Goswami. Why did he speak Bhagavatam? This is a verse glorifying Srimad Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Again, first canto, 2nd chapter. Yasvanubhavam akila shruti saramekam adhyatma deepam atititirshatam tamondam samsarinam karunayaha purana guhyam tam vyasasonu upayami gurum muninam. Right? He says, tam vyasasonu upayami. I surrender to the son of Vyasadev, Shukadeva Goswami, Gurum Muninam, who is the guru of all the sages. Karunaya aha purana guhyam. This work of Srimad Bhagavatam, as spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, is an act of compassion. Karunaya. Karunaya aha purana guhyam. Huh? And what is this verse? What is this book? Akila Shruti Saram Ekam. This is the one scripture which is the essence of all the scriptures. So, to whom is this compassion directed towards? The Paramahamsas. The Paramahamsas need compassion. Huh? So he says, Samsarinam. So this compassion is directed to the samsaris. For all the people of this world, even in the future. So, yes, Swanubhavam. And he spoke this Bhagavatam based on his personal realization. He was not just repeating. He was repeating with realization. And this book is Adhyatma Deepam. It is the revealer of Atma. Atma here refers to soul, body, and Krishna also. Right? Atiti Tirshatam Tamo Andam. So he spoke out of compassion for the samsaris who desire to cross over this ocean of material ignorance. For those desiring to cross the dense ignorance with ease. For them he spoke, which means they have not yet crossed. They have a desire to cross, but they don't know how do we do it. And Shukadev Goswami came, here, take it. Krishne Swadamo Pagate Dharma Jnanadibissaha Kalau Nashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dunoditaha. Now that Krishna has left, the son of Krishna has set, but another son of Srimad Bhagavatam has risen. Okay, for those people who are Kalau Nashtadrisham, in this age of Kali, who have lost their vision, who do not know, who are just groping in darkness, being beaten left, right, center by Maya Devi. For them, Bhagavatam has risen. Okay, so that is another verse which says Bhagavatam was spoken for Kalau Nashtadrisham, especially for the people of Kali Yuga who have lost their vision. For that purpose, Bhagavatam has risen. This is Shukadev Goswami speaking to the samsaris who are desiring to cross over the ocean of material existence. They have not yet crossed. The means of crossing is Bhagavatam. What about Maitreya? Why did Maitreya speak Srimad Bhagavatam to Vidura? Or he says, Maitreya himself says, Soham Nrinam Kshulla Sukaya Dukkam Mahadgatanam Viramaya Tasya Pravartaye Bhagavatam Puranam Yadaha Sakshat Bhagavan Rishibhyaha. He says, Aham Pravartaye Bhagavatam Puranam. I explain this Bhagavat Puran. Yad Aha Sakshat Bhagavan Rishibhyaha, which was spoken by the Lord to the sages. I am going to speak to you that same Bhagavatam. But for what? For what purpose? For whom? Nrinam Dukkam Viramaya. For removing the suffering of persons. Which persons? Mahad Gatanam Dukkam, who have fallen into great distress. Whom are you talking about? He says, Kshulla Sukaya. By seeking insignificant happiness. Kshulla Sukaya Mahad Gatanam Dukkam. People of this world are running after insignificant happiness, but they get big distress. They pay a disproportionate price of distress for getting insignificant happiness. Tasya Viramaya. I want to put a full stop for this. I want to put a full stop to this futile endeavors of these people. So what is the solution? He says, Pravartaye Bhagavatam Puranam. I'm going to speak Bhagavatam for them. So that they stop these futile endeavors. To get insignificant happiness, they are paying a disproportionate price of distress. So when Maitreya spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, he had the fallen people of this world as the target audience. What about Narada Muni? Narada Muni also instructed Vyasadeva. He said, what you should write, for whom you should write this Bhagavatam. So, actually, if you see that Vyasadev, Narada Muni criticized Vyasadev. Jugupsitam dharma krite anushasatah swabhava raktasya mahan vyatikrama yad vakyato dharma iti itarah stito namanyate tasya nivaranam jana. He said, what have you done, Vyasadev? You have compiled this karma shastras, dharma shastras for people who have interested in enjoying. Is that your best offering to this world? Yad vakyato dharma iti itarah stito namanyate tasya nivaranam jana. People of this world are interested in enjoying. They will take your words to be a recommendation, and they will think that yes, Vyasadeva was recommended. He said that it is all right to enjoy. They will not know that you have mentioned this so that gradually they will give it up. Na manyate tasya nivaranam. They will not give it up, but they will just think, oh, Vyasadeva was recommended. Vyasadeva was recommended. We are not doing any adharmic thing. So in this way, they will never give it up. Is this the best thing that you have to offer? Vyasadeva protested. He said, no. What about the Vedanta Sutra? I have given Vedanta Sutra, the essence of Vedanta. Can't you see it? Yes, I have given the Karma Shastras for a particular class of people, but I have given the Vedanta Sutra. Why can't you see that? Narada Muni responds. He says, Vichakshano asya arhati veditum vibhor ananta parasya nivrittita sukam pravartamanasya gunair anatmanas tato bhavan darshe cheshtitam vibho. He says, actually, you know what, Vyasadev? Who can understand your compilation of Vedanta Sutra? He says, the Vichakshanas, the wise person, Nivrittitaha, the one who has given up material happiness, one who is wise and one who has given up material happiness, he can read your Vedanta Sutra and asya sukam, asya vibhoho sukam veditum arhati, and he can realize the happiness of Lord by taking shelter of your Vedanta Sutra. It is for class audience. And then they may eventually take up to Bhakti, setting an example for others. But what literature, what tangible literature have you given for gunair pravartamanasya, for those who are pushed by the gunas of matter? What have you given? Only the Karmakanda Shastras? Is that the best you have to offer to them? Let me suggest to you, O Vyasadev, Bhavan Darshaya Vibhoho Cheshtitam. You should give them the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. For whom? Anatmanaha. For those materialists who have lost their Atma, practically, they are killers of their own soul. They are interested only in enjoying. Gunair pravartamanasya, they are pushed by the gunas. For them, the best thing that you have is the Karma Shastras. Why don't you give them Srimad Bhagavatam? Give them Srimad Bhagavatam. Let them. Is Srimad Bhagavatam devoid of joy? There are so many pastimes of the Lord. Let them read the pastimes of the Lord, and let them get. They will also feel satisfied. Their desire for hearing something, entertainment, will also be satisfied. Otherwise, they will take your Karma Shastras and keep on enjoying, and they will not give up that enjoyment. So therefore, Narada Muni is instructing Srimad Bhagavatam that you have not given a literature for the materialists who are pushed by the gunas. So what you should give? you should give Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, right? So this is Narada Muni's instruction to Vyasadeva. Further, later he also says, Etadi atura chittanam matra sparsha ichaya muhuhu bhavasindu plavo drishto haricharyanu varnanam. Further, after describing his own life, he says, my dear Vyasadeva, understand. He says, Drishtaha, this is my personal experience. I am conveying to you my own personal experience. Muhuhu atura chittanam, that those who are always full of cares and anxieties. Cares and anxieties caused by what? Matra sparsha ichaya. Matra means sense objects. Matra sparsha means people are in constant anxiety trying to get their senses in touch with their sense objects so that they can get some gratification. So, muhuhu atura chittanam, people are full of cares and anxieties because they want to somehow get their senses in touch with the sense objects. What is the solution for them? Bhava Sindhu Plavaha, the only boat which can help these kind of people cross over this ocean of nations is Haricharyanu Varnanam, description of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, my dear Vyasadeva, you should compile a literature which will accomplish this task. For whom? Matra sparsha ichaya muhur atura chittanam. For those who are constantly consumed by anxieties because they want to bring their senses in touch with their sense objects. So again, this is second time Narada Muni is instructing Vyasadeva, you should compile a literature for these people. And therefore he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is Paramahamsa Samhita. Then the question arises, if Srimad Bhagavatam is for such fallen people, why is Srimad Bhagavatam called Paramahamsa Samhita? Right? Is it inappropriately called Paramahamsa Samhita? Or how do we understand? Bhagavatam is called Paramahamsa Samhita for two reasons. Okay. For two reasons, Bhagavatam is called as Paramahamsa Samhita. Okay. The first reason is that anyone who takes shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam will become a Paramahamsa. Anyone who takes shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam will become a Paramahamsa. Nothing less than that. Okay. Even though it is meant for materialistic people, but it is not just meant to give some entertainment for the materialistic people. It actually elevates them to the platform of being Paramahamsas. So Bhagavatam is Paramahamsa Samhita not because it is meant only for Paramahamsas. It is called Paramahamsa Samhita because it can elevate any person who takes shelter of it to the position of a Paramahamsa. Okay. And the second reason why it is called Paramahamsa Samhita is because only Paramahamsas can perfectly relish it. Right? As Srila Rupa Goswami says, only Paramahamsas can perfectly relish it. Srila Rupa Goswami tells in Nectar of Instruction, what does he say? Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya Pittopatapta Rasanasya na Rochikanu Kintu Adarad Anudinam Kalusaiva Jushta Swadvi Kramad Bhavati Tadgada Mulahantri. He says, Krishna Nama Charita Adi. Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, etc. Sita. Sita Pisyat. They are certainly sweet. They are sweet, no doubt about it. Okay. But avidya pittopatapta rasanasya na rochikanu. But a jaundiced person whose tongue, according to Ayurveda, is covered by a layer of bile, pitta. Jaundice, according to Ayurveda, is due to an increase of pitta or bile, excess secretion of bile or some bile secretion disorder. So what happens? This bile gets accumulated in the tongue also. And whenever bile mixes with any sweet object, the combination tastes very bitter to the tongue. So therefore a jaundiced person, whenever he eats something sweet, it tastes very bitter. Okay. But interestingly, according to Ayurveda, the medicine for a jaundiced person is actually sugar candy or sugarcane juice. Okay. So when he takes that sugar candy or sugarcane juice, it tastes very bitter, but that acts as a medicine. And then how does one know whether he is improving or not? That sugar candy or sugarcane juice will start tasting less and less bitter. And at some point, when he is able to perfectly relish that glass of sugarcane juice or that piece of sugar candy, it means he is perfectly fine. Okay. So Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapi Syat. Certainly, Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes are very sweet. But avidya pittopatapta rasanasya na rochikana. But for a person whose tongue and eyes and ears are covered by this layer of ignorance, he will find them very bitter. He will find them very bitter. But what should a jaundiced patient do? Adarad anudinam kalusaiva jushta. With respect, regularity, and regulation, he should accept it. He should accept the medicine. Right? With respect. With respect means what? He should have faith in the medicine. He should not have any offensive mentality towards the doctor. He should have faith in the process. He should have faith in the one who is dispensing the medicine also. Right? That is adarad. Anudinam. Anudinam means with regularity and with regulation. Regularity means every day. Regulation means at the right time. A time for everything and everything at its time. You do it. Morning time is for chanting, then this is the time for reading. So this is anudinam, adarad anudinam kalusaiva jushta. If he takes the medicine regularly, swadvi kramat bhavati, gradually it becomes very tasty. So while the sugarcane juice is a luxury and it is an object of enjoyment for the Paramahamsas, the diseased people need it the most because it's medicine for them, even though they are finding it very bitter. Right? While the Paramahamsas will swim in the nectarian ocean of Srimad Bhagavatam, a sadhaka has to pull himself and say, okay, it's time for Bhagavatam, let's hear it now. Oh, it's not so relishable, but still, adarad anudinam kalusaiva jushta, swadvi kramat bhavati. Gradually it will become tasty. Right? So therefore, the two reasons we saw why it is called Paramahamsa Samhita. Anyone who takes shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam will become a Paramahamsa. And the second reason is only Paramahamsas can perfectly relish it. Just like sugarcane juice, the actual taste of sugarcane juice is experienced only by a healthy person, not by a jaundiced person. So similarly, the actual effect of Srimad Bhagavatam is experienced only by Paramahamsas. Like you see this again and again in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Pundarik Vidyanidhi hears one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Aho Bakiyam Stanakala Kotam, which describes the merciful nature of Krishna. He is literally rolling in the ground, tearing his dress and scratching his body, and all ecstatic symptoms are manifesting, but nothing is happening to us. The only effect that happens is our eyes slowly close, our mind quickly wanders, and our ears are hearing something else, right? That is the only effect that happens to us. But real Paramahamsas, they experience the real effect of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. One verse is sufficient. What happened to Shukadev Goswami? What happened to Pundarik Vidyanidhi? What happened to Mukunda Sarkar? All these personalities, they had such experience, just one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's all. So the Paramahamsas, they have the perfect experience of what, just like a healthy person, he can taste exactly exactly how sugarcane juice is supposed to taste. A healthy person can only taste it that way, right? So like that. So and also, we started with the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will take that again. What does the second verse say? The second verse, I will just concentrate on the last two lines. He says, Srimad Bhagavate Mahamunikrite Kimva Parair Ishvara Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Atra Kritibihi Shushrushibit Tachanat. Okay. Shri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, there are two types of people who take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. One is a kritibihi. A kritibihi means an accomplished hearer who is very expert in hearing. The second category of people are shushrushubihi. Shushrushubihi means they are conditioned souls, but they have some interest in hearing. So he says, both get benefited. How? Ishvaraha sadyo hridya varudyate. As soon as you hear, if it is a kritibi, if he is an accomplished hearer, if he is a Paramahamsa, then Ishvaraha, the Supreme Lord, Sadyo, immediately Hridya Varudyate, he manifests within the heart. That's why the ecstatic symptoms manifest. Atra, when they hear Bhagavatam. But what about the sincere sadhakas who are struggling with their own conditionings? He says, Atra, if they hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Shushrushubi, a sincere sadhaka, Tatshanat. Tatshanat means gradually over a period of time. Ishvaraha Hridya Varudyate. If he is an accomplished hearer, immediately the Lord will manifest within the heart as soon as he hears one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, one syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam. But if he is a Shushrushabhi, if he is a sincere practitioner who is interested in hearing but still struggling, Tatshanat, gradually over a period of time the Lord will manifest within the heart, which means he will also become a Paramahamsa. So therefore, and this is what Bhagavatam again says in the second canto. You will read this verse. Pibantiye Bhagavata Atmanas Satam Katamritam Shravana Puteshu Sambritam Punantite Vishaya Vidushitashayam Vrajanti Tacharana Saroruhantikam. Two benefits of studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Pibantiye Bhagavata Atmanas Satam. Those who drink this nectarian beverage of Srimad Bhagavatam, Katamritam Shravana Puteshu. Through their ear holes, those who drink this nectarian beverage of Srimad Bhagavatam, two things happen. First thing, Punantite Vishaya Vidushita Ashayam. There is purification of heart which is covered by this conditioning. Vishaya Vidushita Ashayam. Ashayam means heart. Vidushita means contaminated. By what? Vishaya. Sense gratificatory desires. It purifies. So this is for sadhakas. Then what happens? Vrajanti tacharana saroruhantikam. It will take you to the lotus feet of Krishna as soon as you hear. This is for whom? Paramahamsas. Okay. While Paramahamsas will immediately get transported to the lotus feet of the Lord when they hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the sadhakas will get ready to reach that state. Their heart will become purified, so that with a pure heart, when they hear, they will immediately get transported to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is not just for the Paramahamsas. It is primarily meant for the fallen souls of this world. But you have to have those topics which will initially hook them and prepare them to hear the higher subject matters, right? While you want to train people to enter into the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT. So if you are picking up students from the 6th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, you have to gradually raise them only. It's not that you directly start teaching them IIT syllabus. If they are in 8th grade, you train them accordingly. You lay the right foundation so that when they come to 11th grade and 12th grade, they will be able to understand the IIT subject matter clearly, right? So therefore, because Bhagavatam has taken the responsibility of picking up those people and raising them up to the level of Paramahamsas, it has to address certain subject matters at their level also, right? So therefore, we should understand that these topics are there in Srimad Bhagavatam because none of us are Paramahamsas yet. We are aspiring to become one in future. But right now, there needs to be subject matter which can raise us to that level. So this is the first reason. There are 5 reasons. The first reason why such subject matters are there in Srimad Bhagavatam is that Bhagavatam is not just meant for Paramahamsas, it is meant for all kinds of people. At this point, I will pause to see if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions. Okay, I am pausing. You can raise your hands or whatever is your procedure. Anything anyone would like to share, add? Is it clear or is it very difficult to understand? You can share your thoughts. What do you think?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Prabhu.
So very nicely presented. It's very interesting because we have studied many of these verses, but we have never, at least I have never thought in this direction, how these verses relate to the subject matter which we are discussing. So I'm very happy to go through this exercise, and I'll have to definitely hear the class again to digest all the material you have provided, all the understanding you have given.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Anything else anyone would like to ask or add or some thoughts before we move on to the second reason?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So
Yes,
to continue on what Amritam Prabhu said, we have been reading these verses, but there's so many layers of meaning and details are there, especially when we hear from the devotees like you, then we can uncover these layers. So sometimes as we read, we just read and then we just grasp something and go, but there is so much of layers of meanings are there to help us to firmly situate. So thank you for uncovering those layers and bringing out the essence. Thank you, Prabhuji.
thank you. Actually, I just wanted to add something on this. Actually, it is if I have to Actually, all these layers have been uncovered by the acharyas. Just that we should have a patient approach. Two things which are very critical in studying the Shastras. First thing is patient approach. Patient approach and in the association of devotees. Because in the association of devotees, each one's sincerity, because our enthusiasm and our eagerness is always fluctuating. But in the association of devotees, even if our enthusiasm is fluctuating, someone's enthusiasm will pull us. So, and in the association, actually, many of these layers get revealed only when we come together with devotees and relish Srimad Bhagavatam. And in fact, Srila Rupa Goswami, when he is talking about the 5 most potent limbs, does he say that reading Srimad Bhagavatam is one of the 5 most potent limbs? Actually, no, he does not say that. He says, Shrimad Bhagavata Arthanam Aswadaihi Rasikaihi Saha. This is one of the 5 most potent limbs. Okay. One should come together with devotees and churn and relish the depth of the meanings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And what kind of devotees? Rasikaihi Saha. Those who are willing to relish the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, those who are willing to apply the teachings of Bhagavatam, in the association of such sincere, like-minded devotees, one should come, and the churning process actually brings out the real butter. So this is very important. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam is not a very potent limb. It's a very good limb of devotional service. But the limb is potent when we come together and go through this process, actually. Then it is a very potent limb.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Anything else anyone would like to share? Yes,
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Mukund.
Balaram Shakti Prabhu. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Very nicely you are explaining with a different perspective, as Prabhuji has also said. So, Prabhuji, I was wondering about the audience. Here you are saying this is not only for Paramahamsas, but for the common man also. They can eventually elevate to Paramahamsa stage. So, does the same concept also applies to Bhagavad Gita as well, or other scriptures?
Well, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because ultimate Bhagavad Gita is a literature primarily which is meant for illuminating practitioners of different categories. It has some very good take home for the Karma Yogis. It has some very good take home for the Jnana Yogis. It has some very good take home for the Ashtanga Yogis. But for those who are ready, for those whose faith is ready to accept the path of bhakti, it has some really very good take home for the bhakti yogis also. So, but yeah, not all scriptures fall within that category, even though conclusively, ultimately from Krishna's perspective, he designed the Karma Shastras and Jnana Shastras also in such a way that so that eventually they may take up to Bhakti Yoga, but it does not guarantee, because for that we need to understand how one gets qualified to practice Bhakti. That happens only through the association of devotees. That Krishna will not guarantee, because that Krishna has left it to the devotees. So, but till then, they should not live a very adharmic, sinful life. So for them, Krishna has given this Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, like that, depending on their qualification. But when one becomes fortunate, when Brahmande Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev, if he is Bhagyavan, if he is fortunate enough to get in touch with a devotee and receive the seed of devotional service, then for them Bhagavatam is there. Bhagavatam can elevate them. or Bhagavatam can also provide that seed in some way or other, like that. So in answering to your question, no, not all books share this kind of a vision the way Bhagavatam shares. Is that okay, bro?
Right. Yeah. But Bhagavad Gita also, there is a mention of universal form, and as you said, like there are also like all three aspects are covered: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So, what is the conclusion of, according to Srila Prabhupada, conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is also Bhakti, right? But you are saying it's not necessarily Prema level. Is that how
Well,
I should understand?
the point is, we have to understand, Prabhupada, not everyone is Saragrahi. Not everyone is capable of accepting the essence. Okay. So, so therefore, the scripture, Bhagavad Gita as a scripture, it has something very tangible for those who are capable of accepting the essence, which is Bhakti.
Right.
But it also has, if someone is not capable of accepting the essence, it has something tangible for them also. It will not let them go. So someone may not come to the conclusion of, Prabhupada says, if you are a Saragrahi, if you are capable of understanding the essence of Bhagavad Gita, then after studying Bhagavad Gita, you will come to the conclusion that the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. But if someone is not qualified to extract the essence, then he may say the essence of Bhagavad Gita is Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma karma phala heturbur mate sangostva karmani. Well, fair enough. At least he will not live a life dedicated to sin. And when he becomes fortunate, when such a person, while living a very pious life, detached life, when he becomes fortunate to come in touch with a pure devotee and receive the seed of devotion, then he will become qualified to understand, oh, I thought that this was the essence of Bhagavad Gita, but now I understand that the real essence of Bhagavad Gita is Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Like that. We are fortunate, we have the association of Srila Prabhupada, we have accepted his association, we have accepted his authority. So therefore, we are able to understand his instructions that the actual essence of Bhagavad Gita is Sarvadharman Parityajya. But not everyone is a Saragrahi. So Bhagavad Gita helps them also. Like that.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Very nice summary, bro. Very in-depth analysis of the verses that you covered, where it says that Bhagavatam is not only for the Paramahamsa, but also for the Jivas of Kali Yuga who are deprived of knowledge and religiosity. Means here also kind of an Achintya Chinta Veda philosophy is right. It is also for the Paramahamsa as well as for the fallen ones, actually. So, Prabhu, I'm part of another group where I just heard it about, I don't know where is the source, where there is a glories of Bhagavatam was mentioned. Is it happened, Prabhu, when Sukadeva Goswami was able to speak the Bhagavatam, demigods came with a nectar and say, hey, we can exchange in terms of Harikatha, and then Sukadeva Goswami kind of denied them speaking Harikatha in exchange of the nectar. I don't know the source for it. So my question is that why Sukadeva, if that is, I don't know if that has happened in true, why demigods were deprived of hearing the Harikatha?
I'm not very sure.
Okay.
Because because Bhagavatam is there in the heavenly planets also.
Okay. So the maybe where I got this information is, Prabhu, the ISKCON Bhagavata
Mahavidyalaya.
Mahavidyalaya, yeah, from Brajasundar Prabhu.
Mhm.
I think in one of his newsletters, or he mentions about this. Maybe I can forward that information to you. But as I know, I don't know. I never heard this before. I don't know the source.
Mhm.
So he forwarded.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Prabhu, what is most important in any story that we hear is the context and the insight that the acharyas give. Otherwise, there are so many stories actually. And sometimes the stories are meant for edifying the faith of particular class of people. I will just give you a small insight into this. For example, there are different shastras which give different stories. For example, and those stories are meant for edifying the faith of their target audience. Okay. For example, if you see, I will give just one or two examples. If you see the example of the character portrayal of various personalities. For example, the character portrayal of Vritrasur. So Matsya Puran says that Bhagavatam is that literature in which the story of Vritrasur appears. Now, one might think that, okay, Bhagavatam is the only literature in which the story of Vritrasur is there. But this is not true. There are other literatures which talk about the story of the fight between Indra and Vritrasur. This is there. But in all the other scriptures are Karma Shastras or Dharma Shastras. The way they portray that whole story is that in that also Indra ends up killing Vritrasur only. Okay. But that in that the portrayal is that it is portrayed as victory of Dharma over Adharma. Victory of the divine forces over the demoniac force. And the real hero of that whole episode is actually Indra. And he is glorified as Vritraha, the killer of Vritra. But if you see Bhagavatam's portrayal of the same character, the same story almost, but where is the focus light? The focus light is on the heart of Vritrasur, the prayers of Vritrasur, the instructions of Vritrasur to Indra, and the focus is also on the heart of Indra, where Indra thinks at some point, who is the demon and who is the demigod here? I am supposed to be the devotee, he is supposed to be the demon. But it looks like I am the demon and he is the devotee. And even in killing, in managing to kill Vritrasur, Bhagavatam portrays Indra as the out and out loser. He gains Swarga and loses everything. Practically anyone who hears this episode of Vritrasur and Indra, in dying, Vritrasur has gained immortality. Right? Everyone knows that Vritrasur is the hero. But in all the other scriptures which have this episode, Indra is glorified because it is meant for a particular audience. It is meant for those audience who have karma shraddha, who have faith in karma. So these scriptures talk about, these stories are, so to such people, the instruction that needs to be given is always follow dharma, never indulge in adharma. So the story will edify that faith, or the focus light will be shifted in such a way that it will edify that faith of that practitioner. But for those who have come to Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam will shift the focus light. It will focus on the devotion of Vritrasur rather than the act of Indra killing Vritrasur. Even though it does not hide, it's not that in Bhagavatam Vritrasur ends up killing Indra, right? And the Bhagavatam redefines success. Many of the success stories of Srimad Bhagavatam, the person who is successful actually ends up dying only, but still he is hailed as the hero. But in these kind of Dharma Shastras, Indra is the hero because he kills Vritrasura, right? So the person who ends up killing, he must be the hero. So like that. So anyway, so the point is that there are many such stories. We should be very careful to pick up these stories, because the first thing we should know is whom is this story meant for, because that story may not necessarily nourish our pure devotional faith, because it is meant for nourishing some other faith, right? So I generally don't comment on these stories which I don't know, unless I know if an acharya has commented on it, because I would like to know, because their perspective, because sometimes their perspective is, oh, this is meant for people who have karmanishta, then I don't have any take home for it, like that.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This brings up many questions.
Yeah.
Nice discussion. So, being practicing devotees, then our focus should be of Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, So,
Yeah.
where should be our focus then? Because this kind of stories are very nectarian to ears.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on how much we value our faith. It all depends on how much, what is the premium we place on our pure devotional faith. Otherwise, entertainment is all around. It's in the air. In Vedic literatures, outside Vedic literatures, it's everywhere. You have entertainment. But what is the premium we are putting on protecting our pure devotional faith? Okay. So, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, in his book Manas Siksha, he says, Yadicher avasam vrajabuvi saragam pratijanur yuvadvandvam tachet paricharitum arad abhilashe Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasya Grajamapi Sputam Premna Nityam Smaranama Tadatvam Shrunumana. He says, my dear mind, this is spoken in the form of instructions to his mind. So he says, Yadicher Avasam. If you desire residence, Vraja Bhuvi, in the land of Vrindavan, Saragam, possessing the kind of love that the Vrajavasis have towards Krishna, Radha and Krishna. If that is your goal of life, if you have identified this as the goal of your life, Pratijanur, life after life, which means if you are willing to take birth again and again to achieve this goal, and while staying in Vrindavan, what do you want to do? Yuvad Dvandvam Tachet Paricharitum Arad Abhilashe. If you want to stay close to the divine couple and serve them, if you have identified this as your goal of life, then there is only one way. Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasya Grajamapi. You have to follow the writings of Swarup Damodar Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatan Goswami and their followers. There is no other way. If your goal is specific, the means to attain that goal is narrow. If your goal is broad, the means to attain that goal is broad. If you want liberation, there are many ways of attaining it. If you don't want just liberation, you want Bhagavat Prem, then the path becomes little narrow, only 4 sampradayas through which you can get Bhagavat Prem. If your desire is still more narrow, if you want Krishna Prem, then the path is still narrow. There are just 1 or 2 sampradayas which give you Krishna Prem. And if you are still narrow, no, not just any Krishna Prem. I want only Vraja Krishna Prem, the way the Vrajavasis worship Krishna, that kind of love I want, that which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, then you have to follow the writings of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is nothing else, nowhere else you can get. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, commenting on this, he says, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is indicating here that if you want Krishna Prem or Prem towards Vraja Krishna, he is asking, can you get it elsewhere other than our Sampradaya? So he says, no, you cannot. So if you want something more generic, you can, there are a lot of places you may get it, bona fide places. You can read from Sri Vaishnava scriptures, Madhva scriptures. There is an assortment of scriptures you can read from. But if you want something specific, then you have to know what specific thing you want. You want to develop attraction for worshipping Lakshmi Narayan, then probably you should go and accept a Sri Vaishnava Guru or a Madhva Guru and follow them chastely and attain that goal. Or if you want something more specific, that which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, then come and surrender to the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas and in a chaste way try to follow their teachings, and you will attain what they are suggesting, like that.
Very nice, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
For confirming.
Okay. So, I think now we will move on to the second reason. Maybe I'll cover the second and third reason together. And then we will again open up for some discussion. Okay. So the first reason is that Srimad Bhagavatam is not just for the Paramahamsas. The second reason is that this is slightly, more or less similar, but slightly not exactly similar. Different people have different qualifications, and not everyone is qualified for pure devotional service, right? So for those who are qualified for pure devotional service, you can give them something, but not everyone is qualified for pure devotional service also. So you have to elevate people, not just materialistic people. You have to elevate people who have faith in karma, jnana, yoga also into the path of bhakti and elevate them to the level of Krishna prema, right? So Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu says that Srila Rupa Goswami says, Shastratah shruyate bhaktau nrumatrasya adhikarita sarvadhikaritam magasnanasya bravato yata drishtantita vashishtena haribhaktir nrupam prati. He says, Shastratah shruyate. The scriptures say that nrumatrasya adhikarita, that anyone who is a human being is qualified to practice bhakti. Okay, it says like that. I will not go through the rest of the verse. It just gives an example to illustrate this point. But the point is that Shastras do say, what is the qualification for practicing bhakti? Human being. If you are a human being, you are qualified for practicing bhakti. Well, yes, what it means is there is no material disqualification for practicing bhakti. Okay. Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasha abira shumba yavanaha kasadaya yenye cha papa yadapa shreya shreya shuddyanti tasmai prabha vishnave namaha. Whatever may be you, however disqualified, unqualified you may be, you can practice bhakti. Which means, so such verses indicate that there is no material disqualification for practicing bhakti. But having said that, it's not that it has no qualification. There is a bare minimum qualification, and that is faith. Okay. So in the same Bhakti Rasam Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes this verse from the 11th canto Uddhav Gita. Yadrichaya matkatadau jata shraddostu yahpuman na nirvinno nati sakto bhakti yogosya siddhita. Who can achieve perfection in bhakti? He says, if somehow or other by good fortune, yadrichaya, which means by coming in touch with a pure devotee. Okay. Jata shraddha astu. If someone develops faith in what? Mat kata adav. In hearing and chanting my glories. If someone can develop some faith, then what is the nature of that faith? He says, na nirvinno nati sakto. Such a person will neither be so disgusted with this material world just like a jnani, nor will his goal of life be to enjoy in this material world like a karmi. That is the nature of this faith. We can assess our own faith. What is your goal of life? We may say, is it that you are frustrated with this material world and somehow get away from it? Is that our goal? I mean, we do have some level of frustration with this material world for sure. But is that our whole and soul goal? Maybe not. And it's not that we have completely overcome the desire to enjoy also. We do succumb to desire for sense gratification every now and then, right? But at the same time, is that our goal of life? Maybe not, right? So the nature of this faith is that at least a beginner, he is neither convinced that, mukti is the goal, nor is he convinced that bhakti is the goal, enjoyment. He is willing to consider that to establish a relationship with Krishna is my goal. That goal, that faith may not be strong, but it is there. It may be weak faith, pliable faith, komala shraddha, but nevertheless that faith is there. And this is the nature of this faith. So, yadrichaya mat katadau jata shraddostu yahpuman nanirvinno nati sakto bhakti yogosya siddhida. Such a person can attain perfection in bhakti. So the point is that one should have faith. Faith is a prerequisite. Okay. Now, isn't it contradicting? Because on one side you said that if you are a human being, it is a qualification. All that needs, you have to just be a human being. But now you are telling you have to have faith. That's a qualification. Now, in this material world, for doing anything you need faith, right? Is there if you are joining Microsoft, you should have faith that they will pay you at the end of the month, right? With that faith only you will join. Okay. So when your mother or your wife comes and hands you a glass of milk or water, you will drink it because you have faith that it's not poisoned, right? So to do anything in this world, the whole world runs on the substratum of faith. Okay, faith is a prerequisite for anything. You can't. Why would you perform anything in any action in which you don't have any faith? Right? Faith is a prerequisite for doing any action, whether it is karma, jnana, yoga, etc. Right? Even they have faith as a prerequisite. Apart from that, they have additional prerequisite. But for bhakti, faith is the only prerequisite. There is no other prerequisite. And that faith is a prerequisite for doing anything in this material world. If you don't have faith, you would not do it. Right? So therefore, to say that faith is a prerequisite is to say that actually there is no prerequisite. There is no qualification for bhakti. Right? So, but interestingly, not everyone has faith in everyone in the material world also, right? You may have faith in your mother, or I may have faith in my mother that whatever she gives, without even looking at it, I will eat it. I will put it in my mouth. But if my mother gives something to a stranger, will that stranger put it in his mouth? He will not, because he does not have that faith, right? So similarly, even though any human being can practice bhakti, but not every human being will practice because they won't have faith. Just like, how have I developed this faith in my mother? Through favorable experiences, right? So similarly, people who have had these favorable experiences in relationship with devotees and things connected with Krishna, gradually over many lifetimes, this accumulates and this becomes faith. Just like in material world also, one develops faith based on experience. Similarly, with respect to bhakti also, one develops this faith based on prior experience, which is called as agyata sukriti. Okay, this agyata sukriti accumulates and matures into faith. But if there are people who are not fortunate enough to have accumulated sufficient Agyata Sukriti, which is good enough to breach the threshold of faith, then such people will not have faith in Bhakti. So such people may not accept direct teachings of Bhakti. So they may have faith in karma, they may have faith in jnana, they may have faith in yoga. So Bhagavatam does describe these aspects also, so that it can make them also feel interested in the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam does talk about karma yoga. Bhagavatam does talk about jnana yoga also. Not in conclusion, just as a bait. To bait them. Okay, there is something in it for you also. Please come. And then it will catch hold of their hand and raise their qualification from karma to bhakti, or from jnana to bhakti, or from yoga to bhakti. Seamlessly, without their knowing, they will one day end up being devotees. Right? So, therefore, Bhagavatam itself says, talking about karma shraddha, talking about karma shraddha and bhakti shraddha, in the 11th canto, Krishna tells Uddhava, Tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkata shravanadavva shraddha yavan na jayate. He says, Tavat karmani kurvita, till that time, karmani kurvita, one should perform their varnashram duties. Till what time? He says, Na nirvidyeta yavata. The nirvidyeta yavata means till one becomes completely detached from material world. Okay, this complete detachment is a qualification for jnana. Okay, so if they are qualified for jnana, or va means or, mat kata shravanadavva, or if they have developed the mat kata shravanadavva shraddha, or if they have developed faith in the subject matter of bhakti, which is the qualification for bhakti. So either they must have developed complete detachment from this material world, they have no desire to enjoy, which is the qualification for jnana, or they must have faith in the subject matter of bhakti. If they don't have either of these qualifications, tavat karmani kurvita, they should continue to perform their varnashram duties. This is what Bhagavatam says. So Bhagavatam does talk about qualification. Not everyone is qualified. Not everyone has faith. So therefore, for those who have not yet developed that faith, but they have faith in something else, Bhagavatam does seem to talk about those something else also to attract them so that they can also become devotees. Right? So therefore, this is the second reason that not everyone is qualified for bhakti. So Bhagavatam does seem to talk about these other things also to attract such people. Okay, this is the second reason. So I will cover the third reason also, and then again we will pause for some discussion. Okay, so then the third reason is that proper understanding of these topics actually leads to purification. If we properly understand these preliminary topics like discussion on the universal form and all these things, it actually leads to purification. Right? So I'm going to you are going to start the 4th chapter of the 2nd canto. The 4th chapter is titled as the process of creation, right? But there is actually no description of process of creation in the 4th chapter itself. The 4th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj asked some questions, and Shukadev Goswami, he asks some questions about creation. And Shukadeva Goswami, before answering those questions, he offers prayers for empowerment. That's what the 4th chapter is about. And the actual process of creation starts from the 5th chapter, where Shukadeva Goswami promises to Parikshit Maharaj that I will answer all your questions by narrating a conversation that happened between Narada Muni and Brahmaji. So that conversation between Narada Muni and Brahmaji, it goes from 5th chapter, 6th chapter, and 7th chapter. 3 chapters that conversation is described. Okay. And this is the last verse of the 7th chapter. This is the last verse spoken by Brahmaji. Okay. So he says, my dear Narada Muni, why should you hear these topics about creation? Why should you hear these descriptions of the universal form and all these things? These are, after all, activities or pastimes performed by the Supreme Lord with respect to his material energy. Shouldn't you be more eager to hear about the pastimes performed by the Supreme Lord with respect to his spiritual energy? Lord Ram's pastime, Lord Narsingadev's pastimes, these are really relishable. Who relishes pastimes of creation? Who relishes topics about Vedic cosmology? Right? Maybe a handful of people, but for most people, it's not so relishable. So why should I be eager to hear about these topics which talk about Krishna's activities in relationship with Maya in creation, maintenance, and destruction? Okay, he created, he destroyed, he maintained. Sufficient now. Why do I have to know the details? Is it going to inspire me to love Krishna more? One may think like that. Okay, so this is the last verse of that conversation between Narada Muni and Brahmaji. Brahmaji says, very interesting verse, very interesting purport by Srila Prabhupada. We will read both. So Prabhupada says, this is Brahmaji says, Mayam Varnayato Amushya Ishwarasyanu Modatah Shrinvata Shraddaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati. So he says that Atma, if the Jiva, Nityam Mayam Varnayatah, if he constantly describes Maya, it does not mean material subject matter. It does not mean Prajalpa. Okay. What is the meaning of constantly describing Maya? He says, please read ahead. Amushya Ishwarasya, in relation to the Lord. Don't just describe Maya, but here describing Maya in relationship with the Lord means how the Lord interacts with Maya to create, maintain, and destroy this material universe, which means it indicates the creation pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Right? Anumodatah, or remembers Maya, which means Ishwarasya Anumodatah. Amushya Ishwarasya, in connection with the Lord, which means when he describes these creation related pastimes, when he remembers these creation related pastimes, Shrinvataha Shraddaya, or he hears about these pastimes with proper faith, Mayaya na muhyati, he will not be bewildered by Maya. Okay, so therefore, hearing these topics actually protects one, at least in the preliminary stages, where one is vulnerable to the attack of Maya. It protects them. And Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport, very power-packed purport. 2753, the last verse of 7th chapter of 2nd canto. I'm going to read the whole purport. It's a long purport, but it's a very illuminating purport. I'm going to read the whole purport for you. Okay. Srila Prabhupada writes, the science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Fanatics or fools may consider the Lord's activities in relationship with the external energy to be useless for them. And they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. So the Lord's activities with respect to the internal energy are the pastimes performed by the Leela avatars, by Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Vamana, and Krishna, and all these things, right? And the pastimes performed by the Lord in relationship with the external energy are the pastimes performed by the Purusha avatars, Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu, Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, with respect to this creation of this material world. So he says, on the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relationship with the external energy. So, are we completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy? If you feel no, then we should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relationship with the external energy, which means his creation pastimes. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the internal energy, falsely attracted by the Lord's internal potential activities like his Rasa Leela. The chief reciters of the Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the Lord's internal potential activities, and the pseudo devotees absorbed in material sense enjoyment falsely jump to the stage of liberated souls and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of external energy. Okay, the chief reciters of Bhagavatam want to immediately jump to the 10th canto pastimes, and the pseudo devotees want to just enjoy. They don't want any rectification of their conditioned state. They just want entertainment. So this is a very inappropriate combination, and this leads to the fall down of the speaker and the hearer both. Some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis or about his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill. And they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusha avatars and their pastimes of creation, maintenance, or annihilation of the material world. People think that, oh, pastimes means I should be hearing, I should be hearing, pastimes of Govardhan Leela, Ras Leela, like that. What is this creation, maintenance, this section? It's not going to make me love Krishna anyway. Is there anyone in this world who has become a lover of Krishna just by hearing the creation pastimes? Someone may think like that. But here Prabhupada is telling, some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear only about the 10th canto pastimes, and they have nothing to do with the creation pastimes. But a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the pastimes of the Lord either in Rasa Leela or in creation, maintenance and destruction of the material world. Rather, the descriptions of such activities of the Lord as the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of external energy, which I think to a smaller or greater extent we all are in, right? Topics like the Rasa Leela are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls therefore must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy, and such acts are as good as hearing of the Rasa Leela in the liberated state. Which means the same kind of eagerness that a liberated person has for hearing Rasa Leela, the same eagerness a conditioned soul like most of us should have in hearing the topics of creation, maintenance, and destruction. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of the liberated soul. Lord Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Rasa Leela with ordinary men. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. We have several times been requested by some so-called devotees to take up the 10th canto immediately. But we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present Srimad Bhagavatam as the science of Godhead and not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. Prabhupada is telling. So Prabhupada knew that time was limited. Prabhupada knew that if he started from the first canto and reached till the 10th canto, there is a good chance that he may not be able to translate and give commentary to the 10th canto, which is the crest jewel of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada knew it very much. At some point, maybe after, you may say that, oh, he didn't realize it when he was translating the first canto. Fine. He didn't realize it while he was translating the second canto. Fine. Fourth canto. Fine. At some point, he would have had some indication that at this pace, I will not be able to complete the 10th canto. He must have stopped there and started the 10th canto. He didn't do it. He left the all-important 10th canto to be commented upon by his disciples because he knew that he had prepared the ground by commenting upon the first 9 cantos. So if you have systematically understood and your heart is purified by understanding the first 9 cantos, then you are ready for the 10th canto, right? So here he says, this is forbidden by such authorities as Shri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge after being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyment. So gradually they will get elevated like that. So this is the purport of Srila Prabhupada to the 2nd canto, 7th chapter, 53rd verse. Mayam varnayato amushya ishwarasyanumodataha shrinvata shraddaya nityam mayayatma namuyati. So till now we have seen 3 reasons why such subject matters are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. The first reason that we saw was that Srimad Bhagavatam is not just for the Paramahamsas. And second reason we saw that different people have different qualifications. So not everyone may have qualification to hear directly about the topics of pure devotional service. So you have to pull them also. And the third reason is that systematic hearing or proper understanding of the subject matters actually lead to purification of heart. So if we think that our hearts are not purified, then with great enthusiasm and eagerness we should hear these subject matters, because it will make our heart ready to hear the higher subject matters. Okay, 3 reasons over, and we are left with 2 more reasons. But I will pause to see if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions. And then if we are not able to complete it today, maybe some other day we will complete the rest of the presentation. Anything anyone would like to share, ask? Right. Anything?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
So I'm just trying to understand. Earlier, Ram Mukund Prabhu asked this connection to Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. I was not able to fully understand. You said like there is a difference. Can you a little bit elaborate more on that, Prabhuji? I'm just trying to understand.
I am going to elaborate on it in the second part of this presentation, where, okay, I will directly go to that verse. There is one verse. There are so many verses. One of the verses is, Bhagavatam itself says, Kalimala samhati kalano akilesho harir itaratra na giyate hi abhikshnam Iha tu punar Bhagavan Ashesha Murtihi Paripatito Anupadam Kata Prasangaihi. So Bhagavatam says, Narayana, the soul of the universe, Kalimala Samhati Kalana, who destroys all the problems of Kali. Itaratra, in the other literatures other than Srimad Bhagavatam, na giyate hi abhikshnam, is not glorified in other works. But Bhagavan, that Bhagavan, iha, in this Bhagavatam, punar, again and again, abundantly and constantly, paripatito anupadam, in every syllable and in every phrase, the Lord is glorified. Kata prasangaihi, on the pretext of speaking various pastimes, this glorification is there. So therefore, he says that that this the extent to which Bhagavatam is consistent in glorifying the Supreme Lord, in emphasizing Bhakti, to that extent, no other literature is so explicit in emphasizing Bhakti. That is why when Vidura approached Maitreya to hear about Krishna Katha, it is very strange, because Vidura is the son of Yasudev, and Vyasadev is actually more glorious as a writer of scriptures than Maitreya. Probably before studying the third canto, we probably never heard of Maitreya also. But Vyasadev everyone knows. So he is much more illustrious than Maitreya, and he is known to have compiled the Mahabharata. So why should he come and ask Maitreya? So Vidura, the son of Vyasadev, he gives his explanation. He says, Paravareshan Bhagavan Vratani Shrutani me Vyasa Mukad Abhikshnam Atrupnumak Shulla Sukavahanam Tesham Rite Krishna Katamritogat. He says, my dear Maitreya, you know why I have come to you? Shrutani me Abhikshnam. I have constantly heard from my father. What have you heard? Paravaresham Vratani. Vratani means activities. Paravratani, Avaresham Vratani. What is Paravratani? Activities of pious people like the Pandavas. What is Avaresham Vratani? Activities of impious people like the Kauravas. Constantly, Bhagavatam focuses on these two things. Sorry, Srimad Mahabharata focuses on these two things. Vyasa Mukat, I have heard these things again and again. He says, Tesham Atrupnuma, but I am not very satisfied now. Kshulla Sukavahanam, because it gave me very meager pleasure. It gave me very meager pleasure. Okay. Why? Rite Krishna Katamrita Ogat, because it was devoid of the great sweetness of Krishna's pastimes. So therefore, I am not very satisfied. I am not interested in hearing it again and again. I have heard it sufficiently. So can you please speak? Subsequently, he says, please speak only Krishna Katha. I don't want to hear anything else. So therefore, the other literatures in conclusion may have that, but they are not so consistent with that purpose. When we discuss the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam little later in the same presentation, we will see that how only Bhagavatam is consistent in this purpose and not the other literatures. So therefore, Vidura says, I was not very satisfied hearing that like that. Is that relevant, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, to rephrase or to summarize on what I understood is that if somebody reads Bhagavad Gita, if that person has, the person does not have conclusion to understand the essence, he may not conclude in Sarvadharman Parityasha.
Yeah.
But if somebody reads Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, on the authority of Prabhupada, he might be able to understand.
Yes, correct.
Whereas anybody who systematically studies Bhagavatam from the beginning, he will be guaranteed to come to the conclusion.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, the role of devotee association cannot be understated.
Yes.
That also.
When I say read Bhagavatam means in the association of devotees.
Yeah.
So that's why if somebody reads Bhagavad Gita, other than Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, if they don't have qualification to understand the essence, they may not come to Bhakti.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That's very clear. That gives me a very proper understanding now, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else would like to share something, add, or ask any questions?
So, Prabhu, I would like to share that, after repeated hearing many times, when we read the philosophical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam or even Bhagavad Gita, so it is not interesting. And of course, we come in association of devotee and try to create the interest in heart.
Yeah.
It's like still dry. So, what is your suggestion? Struggling devotee.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. Actually, we have to come in the association of devotees and churn that subject matter. So then actually, because many times people lose interest because they can't get a hang of it. When they are not able to understand it, relate to it, and self motivation is generally very weak. Self commitment is the weakest. So when there is association of devotees, there is a bigger commitment, more deeper commitment, and in that association, if you can come together and if churning happens, especially these subject matters cannot be rushed. They have to be patiently addressed. Actually, I was just going to share this. Like if you traditionally see the way a guru used to instruct his disciple, like actually he would speak and the disciple would listen, and the guru is trained in understanding the physiognomy of the disciple. He can look at the disciple, his facial expressions, his bodily posture, and everything, and he can understand whether the person is understanding or not. So he would speak and wait for the disciple to give a nod of approval. Just yes, I have understood the subject matter. And only then he would speak further. It was never rushed. So therefore, this is very important, So, the guru would speak a statement, a sentence, and give sufficient time for the disciple to reflect upon it, digest it, and then when the disciple nods, then he will speak the next statement and give sufficient time for the disciple to assimilate it and digest it, and when he nods, then he will move ahead. This is how it, in the traditionally it was taught, and this is how it should. If one wants to understand a subject matter properly, thoroughly, of course, we are all hard pressed for time. That is a big factor, but it is better to understand. I have personally felt in my own experience teaching people. I won't say teaching. It has been a learning experience for me, myself personally. In teaching, I learn, but the point is that it is. Of course, the VIHE and MIHE and other, they may not agree to this. That's why I don't teach any certificate courses, because no one will get the certificate if they go at my pace. But the point is, it is more important to teach them how to study Srimad Bhagavatam than to actually teach them Bhagavatam, what is the contents of the Bhagavatam. Just rush through the contents and tell them this is there, this is there, this is there, this is there. That that they can learn. But more important is, you can teach them one canto or two cantos, but take your time, teach them how to understand the underlying principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, because the philosophy of Bhagavatam is very consistent. Whether you read first canto or 12th canto or in between 6th to 7th canto, the philosophy is very consistent. If you teach them to identify those underlying philosophies and the underlying applications of Srimad Bhagavatam, when we teach them, when they understand how do we approach Srimad Bhagavatam, then even if we may not have time to complete the whole 12 cantos or 6 cantos, actually they have learned how to seek the essence. So basically, we don't have to teach them Bhagavatam, we have to teach them how to become essence seeking studiers, or of students of Srimad Bhagavatam. So when they learn how to become an essence seeking student, that they say, right, you don't have to teach a person how to you don't have to give them cook them, you have to teach them how to fish, then like that. So this is very important, and I have personally seen this approach to be more rewarding than to actually rush and complete. This is my personal opinion. Others may differ, but this is my personal experience and my opinion on this, actually.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Well, we took like 5 years to study Bhagavad Gita, of course. Still, this
Yeah,
took a long time to study. But I think studying it in a deeper sense it's more relishing, actually.
yeah.
Going purport by purport, line by. So that was actually my part of the question you answered. But my question was like, what do you mean by churning? When you say everybody has a different understanding of the word churning.
Churning means, I will give you an example, bro. And with that, we will end today's discussion because it's, I think, time.
Yeah.
But I will just tell you what I mean by churning. When I visit, like by Krishna's mercy, by devotees, guidance, I was asked to travel to various temples in India to teach, some cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, it was a very nourishing experience for me, because you find different categories of people, right? When you teach, you have people who are completely new, they have not studied anything. You will find such people, okay? But you will also find some categories of people who are very well read in Srila Prabhupada's books. So when you explain something, they will say, Prabhu, you are speaking like this, but Prabhupada in these purports, he speaks like this. How do you reconcile? How will you reconcile? So you should be able to reconcile it, right? There will be other classes of people, they have a very strong habit of hearing from advanced devotees, either Prabhupada or their own guru or some senior devotees. They have very perfectly heard. So they will say, Prabhu, you are speaking like this, but in, this particular Maharaj says like this. How do you reconcile? There seems to be a contradiction here. How would you reconcile? You should be able to reconcile. The third category of people who are very well read in Acharya's books, or Gaudiya Acharya's books. They'll say, Prabhu, you are speaking like this, but you know what? Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha says like this. This seems to be contradicting. How would you reconcile? Right? You should be able to reconcile. Then there are fourth category of people who are well read in other Vedic literatures, which may not be Gaudiya Vaishnava mainstay, like Ramayana, Mahabharata. They are bona fide Vedic literatures, but not so much commented upon by Gaudiya Acharyas. Okay, they may have, Prabhu, you are speaking like this, but in Valmiki Ramayana, this is mentioned like this. How would you reconcile? Right? Or there is a fifth category of people who are like well read in, secular writings. Okay, they may say, Prabhuji, you are speaking like this, but the common understanding is like this. The common understanding outside is like this. So how do you reconcile? And there are sixth category of people who are, Prabhuji, I don't know what the Bhagavatam says or what, but you are telling this is what Bhagavatam says. My personal experience is contradicting it. How are you going to reconcile it? Ultimately, the Shastras should be able to explain what I am experiencing. But my experience is contradictory to your explanation. How do you reconcile it? So this is what. And when would you know that these kind of questions are there? When you ask them to interact. When you give them a forum to voice their thoughts, and when you give them that forum, it will ignite their thought process. They will start applying their intelligence. They will start applying their heart. They will start applying their mind to actually think about the subject matter. So it is the role of the facilitator to facilitate this, to ignite it, to inspire them to think and reflect and see how it is applicable to me. How do I connect it to what I have heard, what I have studied? And for the teacher, he may not be such a well-rounded person. He may not, you will hardly find someone who is perfectly read in Prabhupada's books, perfectly read in Acharya's books, perfectly heard, all these categories. But you get to see various kinds of people, you hear their thoughts, and it's not that you may have an answer for it. Many times you may have to say that, sorry, Prabhu, I don't know. I really never thought about it this way. Let me think about it and I will get back to you. So then you go back, you study the books from that perspective. You ask some senior devotees, you have some discussion with the senior devotees, and then you get fresh perspectives. Then you share. Your understanding is no longer the same. It has become nourished, right? So this is churning. So the key is, how do you facilitate it? So, but it needs to be facilitated. And when it is facilitated, you will realize that it is more nourishing for the teacher than the students. Actually, this is guaranteed. Whether the students get something or not, the teacher will certainly get nourished. Of course, the students will also get, but the teacher will definitely get nourished, because he can add multi dimensions to his own understanding, actually. And that training is given by the students to the teacher, actually. So that's my understanding of what churning is.
That's a really nice way of understanding and giving us the idea of how to churn Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
So, is it okay if you have time next week, or I don't know your schedule.
But next week, but you must be having your regular classes, na Prabhu.
Oh, that's okay. We can continue. This is a very nice discussion.
Well, next week, let me just check, Prabhu, my calendar. I'll get back to you, Prabhu, if next week will be possible or not. And after that, subsequently, I'm traveling to Chowpatty, and I'll be in Chowpatty for 8 days. So I'll keep you posted, Prabhu. I'll check my calendar and I'll let you know. But I don't want to hijack your regular Bhagavatam discussion, because this can be once in a while, nourishment sessions, but your regular studies should continue also. So I'll let you know. We will choose a mutually convenient time and we will complete this presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All of us, please express our gratitude to Prabhu by chanting Hari Bol 3 times at least. Hari Bol!
Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother Chandra Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Amardam
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.